Hello, this is Sam Sterling from Sterling Tuition. I had an email that came from someone who has been receiving the resources to go over basic operations with decimals. So that's what I'm going to look at with you now. So, basic operations with decimals. We'll start with addition and subtraction. They're very linked in that you need to make sure that there's the point under the point when it comes to decimal, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So say we have 228.7 added to 136. Now what would normally happen in this situation is the child, if they're not confident with it or they're not quite sure where they're going with their place values, they'll automatically write 28.7, 136 and then add it up as such. However, this is incorrect because this is actually a tenth and it's being added to a unit, and you cannot add the different place values together. So the acronym that I use is what we call POP, and it stands for point under point. So getting the points lined up means that everything else will be lined up as well. So to put that into practice, what you do is, so say we've got that question, 28.7 added to 136. Write the 28.7 down first. Now the 136, this is a teaching point that I've learned recently that I need to make sure that you understand whenever you're talking to your kids, is that in the 136 there isn't actually a point to put underneath the point. So what you need to say to them basically is, if there is no point, then the decimal point is always at the end, because this is the units and then the decimal point always appears after the units. So I always get them, if there isn't a decimal point, to actually put that decimal point in. So if there isn't a decimal point in the number, the decimal point will always be at the end of the number. And if they want to, sometimes what helps is they can write 0.0 just to make it sort of fit together a bit better. So now we've written down 28.7, we've got 136, and then we've got the point in as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write where the point is in the 136. Okay, and then everything just fits around it. So you've got the 0 beside where the point is, and then the 6, then the 3, and then the 1. The second thing I always say after I've got the POP point under point is, if there's any gaps here, for example, put a 0 in the gaps. It tidies it up, keeps it all together, and it's important for the subtraction as well. And then it becomes just your straightforward column addition. So you've got 7 add 0, 7, put the decimal point in as you go past, 14, carry the 1. It doesn't matter where you carry the 1 as long as you do. You'll find some people carry it down here or below, but my personal preference is the top, but it doesn't matter as long as it's carried. 3 add 2 add 1 just gives you 6, 0 add 1 is obviously 1. And that is basically the basic rules for the addition with the decimal points. And I think, just to reiterate that point with regards to if the number doesn't have a decimal in it, to actually line it up, that it goes at the end. So say 36 added to 12.92. Okay, so the 36 I'd write first. It doesn't have a decimal point, so the decimal point as always appears at the end. And then that means I can now line up this decimal point with this. So I've got my 12 decimal points lined up, and 9, 2. Zeros in the gaps. And you can add it very straightforward and quickly. Try and always put the plus sign as it works as well. So point under point, POP. And then if the decimal point isn't there, it's always at the end of the number. Now this basically follows on quite nicely into the subtraction. It's exactly the same principle. So if you've got 204, take away 13.9. So the 204 doesn't have a decimal point. So whenever you say POP, they might struggle again. So again, remind them of that cue. If there is no decimal point, it always appears at the end. So now we've got our 2 decimal points. We'll bring them down, point under point, line it up. So we've got the 204 point, and then the 13.9. And straight away we've got it lined up in the right columns. We're taking away the right place values from the right place values. Underneath, this is where, as I said again in the previous with addition, you're trying to get the zeros in the gaps, put zeros in the gaps. subtract. And the reason for this was subtraction. If that 0 isn't there, automatically you're thinking you're taking nothing away from 9, so you'll put 9 down. However, that is not the case. This is a 0. And like we know with this column subtraction, this number is smaller than this number. They have to look to the side to borrow. So they're going to borrow from here. He becomes a 3. Now he's a 10. So 10, take away 9, gives you the 1. Then what? 0 point to point, put the point in. 3 take away 3, 0. 0 take away 1 we can't do, so we need to borrow because it's smaller. 10 take away 1 is our 9, and then 1. And that gives you a very different answer. So say they didn't put a 0 in the gap, then what they would get, so they would end up with something that looks probably like that. So 191.9, and as you can see, the two answers are very different. So 0's in the gaps with the subtraction, that point under point. So just do one more example of that. Say I've got 324, 32.4, take away 19. So again, with the subtraction, we write down the first number, 32.4. Now the 19 doesn't have a decimal point, so for our pup, we need to put in the decimal point, and it's always going to be at that end of the number. So 19.0. So put the 19 point, and then 0 in the gap. And now we're ready to do our subtraction. 4 take away 0, 4. Put the point in. 2 take away 9, you can't do. Borrow the 2, 12. Take away 9, so 3. 2 take away 1, 13.4. Okay, so adding, subtracting, point under point, that's something that I didn't, as a teacher this year, I've concentrated a lot on as a teaching point. If there is no decimal point, put it in. It's always at the end of the number if it's not there. Okay, and this all comes down to repetition, but it's something that they'll pick up really quickly. They get that point under point and start to really put it into place. Now multiplication, goes flipping board around slightly. So multiplication is slightly different, and that you don't need to line it up. So say I have 32 times 4.3. What you'll find is, because they've been doing the addition and subtraction where they need to line it up, they'll do something like this. They'll write the 32, 4.3, and do it that way. Now that, they'll still end up with the same answer. However, you're adding an extra column in here that you don't need to do. So just as a general rule, with multiplication, you don't need to line it up. So with this one, the way to do it with decimals is really simple. You literally forget about the decimal. The way I say to them is, say, look at it, let's make this easy for ourselves. So what multiplication could you do that this looks like that's easy? And they'll sort of go, right, well, 32 times 43, I could do that. I says, right, well, let's do that. So put 32 in the 43. Doesn't matter which way around you put this. If there is more digits in the top number, put it in the digits in the top part, put them in the top, because then you've got less to do. But generally it's fine either way. So do your multiplication. Here's 3 times 2 is 6, 9. 3 times 3 is 9. Obviously 0 in the gap because you're moving on to the 40. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 6, and do your addition. 6, 17, 3, 13. So 32 times 43 is 1,376. However, this isn't 32 times 43, this is 32 times 4.3. So this is where the easy part comes in. I'm just going to get a different pen to show you. So you look, how many digits are there after the decimal? And in this we have got 1 digit. We call that 1 dp, or 1 decimal place. And that simply transfers into your answer. So you've got 1 decimal place in the question, so all you have to do is 1 decimal place in the answer. So you put the decimal, so you have got 1 digit after the decimal, just like the question, and your answer will be 137.6. And it is that straightforward. And to put that into perspective, say it was 3.2 times 4.3, you would literally forget about the decimals, and then you would do the multiplication as we've done here, and then how many decimal places are there in the whole question? Well, you've got one decimal place here, you've got one decimal place here, so one digit here after the decimal, so altogether you've got 2 decimal places. So in your answer you have 2 decimal places, so your answer will be 13.76, and it is that straightforward. I'll do it with a bigger one just so that you can see. So if we had let's just do 1.234 times 5.6. Now a lot of kids will look at this straight away and they go, what's going on? Again, forget about the decimal. Let's do 1,234 times 56. So 1,234 times 56. 6 times 4, 24, carry the 2. 6 times 3, 18, add the 2 is 20. 2 times 6, 12, add the 2 is 14. 6 times 1 is 6, add the 1 is 7. So that's our first row done. We can forget about the 6. Moving on to the 5, which is 50 actually, so we put the 0 in. 5 times 4, and then I'll get rid of those before this. 5 times 4 is 20. 0, carry the 2. 5 times 3, 15, add the 2 is 17. 5 times 2 is 10, add the 1 is 11. 5 times 1 is 5 obviously, and then we'll add the 1 is 6. Then we add our 2 together. And our answer is 69,104. Now, that is the answer to 1,234 times 56, but that's not the question that we've been given. So, we look here in the question, we're looking for the number of decimal places in the question, in the whole question. So here we've got 3 after the decimal. So 3 decimal places here, and here we've got 1 decimal place here after the decimal. So altogether, we've got 4 decimal places, 4 dp. So in our answer, we must have 4 decimal places. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So the answer to 1.234 times 5.6 is 6.9104. And if you actually look at it, if you did 1 times 5, it's obviously 5. So your answer should be in around 5. So it's obviously a little bit more than that because you've got the extra bits on. But it is that easy. Get them to forget about the decimal, do the multiplication, and then work out how many decimal places and put it in at the end. Now finally, I'm going to look at division. Division, very, very, very similar. When you've got your division, so say you have, I always use 5 whenever I'm starting out with this because it's an easy one. So say you've got 12.55 divided by 5. So decimal places with division, short division, set it out as you would do. And it's the same thing. Now it changes slightly whenever there's 2 decimals in this part, but whenever there's no decimal here, it is literally this easy. So you see this, you set it out, put the point in exactly above where it goes, and then that's it. So 5 into 1 doesn't go, carry the 1, 5 into 12 goes twice, carry the 2, 5 into 25 goes 5 times, 5 into 5 goes once. And straight away you get your answer, 2.51. So it literally, the decimal point just sits above exactly where you're going. I'll do one more. Let's do 4, 5, 7, 8, 5. And say decimal point is there, divided by 5. So, set out your short division, 7, 8, 5, divided by 5. Decimal point automatically just goes straight above. 5 into 4 doesn't go, carry the 4. 5 into 45 goes 9. 5 in, exactly, 5 into 7 goes once, carry the 2. 5 and 28, 5, 5, 7. So, and there's your answer. So your answer is 9.157. And all you've done is you put the decimal point up. So hopefully that video has been useful. And if you want to go to my website, sterlingtuition.com, Sterling with an I, and click on the free resources. I've lots of free AQE and maths resources that'll they'll help complement this and lots of other different things. Also, if there's any resources or videos that you might think might be useful for me to make, if you send me an email, and I'll try my best to help you out. But hopefully that's been useful. Thank you.